Good morning. So yesterday I explained briefly that one of the deepest thinkers of recent times, especially thinkers of the question of the divine image in man and how it's important for us to preserve it. And this explains many aspects of what we are told concerning the development of the people of Israel. We, called Yaakov, children of the one who was at the heel of his brother Esau, and then he struggled with Esau, both Esau, his enemy, and the enemy of the Jewish people, but also the enemy himself. It's all part of that struggle. And when he was victorious in the struggle with the powers of evil in him, the powers of evil outside of him, then his name was changed to Yisrael. And Yisrael means that God should rule our lives. We should raise our lives to a higher moral level, to accept the rulership of God, who is called the Good One, the one who believes in virtue, and who gives the life to pursue virtue. That's the significance of Israel. So, in the course of the history of our nation, the Romans were frequently our enemies. But in the time of the compiler of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who was a great saint, and although he had a very high position of the people of Israel, at a time when Israel and Judea, so more than the kingdom of Yehuda, was really just a satellite of the Roman Empire, and frequently the Romans persecuted the Jewish people. Two ways: in one way directly, and one because many of the Jews, they joined both the lifestyle and some also the religion of the Romans. But he lived in a time when Jews were beginning to become dispersed after the destruction of the temple. Although until that time, the oral tradition which accompanied the knowledge and the learning of the text of the books of the Bible, so it was no longer possible for there to be a unified oral tradition to be learnt by heart as it used to be, and therefore he compiled authoritative text of the Mishnah and gave permission for it to be written down, to be dispersed. At that time, the Jewish communities, not only in Babylon, but also in Spain, France, and Germany, Italy, North Africa, in different parts of the ancient world. And his main disciple was Rabbi Chia, who was a brilliant scholar and saint. And he really said that Rabbi Chia should become his major successor, although also the sons of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi were also great scholars, but he thought more important, Rabbi Chia was greater. But then, we know, what did Rabbi Chia do? Rabbi Chia used his great talents that he had, and he decided that he should use them in order to teach those in that time who were ignorant. Because although we know that there was a strong spirit of scholarship amongst the higher level of the Jewish population in Eretz Israel, but there were so many of them who were ignorant. So he dedicated himself to teach Torah to those who as yet had little knowledge. So he said, if Rabbi Chia is going to be my successor, he won't be able to continue with his educational abilities. So when we started the yeshiva in the early days, Rav Carmel was the main disciple of Rav Dessler, and who edited his major works. He wanted to call the yeshiva by the same name. So I would want to bring you here the episode as is described in the Gemara. So there's once Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Chamed, Rechiv argued, and Rabbi Chanina said to Rabbi Chia, why do you argue with me? I would be able to, if the Torah would be forgotten, I would be able to bring back the Torah through my Talmudical deliberations, which will clarify all problems. Rabbi Chia said, but I have an ability to make sure the Torah is not forgotten from the Jewish people in the first place. What do? I go and sow flax, then I weave nets from the grown flax, and I trap deer with these nets. I feed their meat to orphans. Then I prepare scrolls of parchment with their skins, and I write the 5 Chumashim of the Torah on these scrolls. Then I go up to the village where there are no teachers to teach people, to teach the children. And the children grow up ignorant. So it was a situation similar to today. That the vast majority of Jewish children don't even know how to say Shema Yisrael. Here and also in that diaspora. So what do? I teach, this was a time with no printing available, so I teach each of the 5 children, each one a different one of the 5 Chumashim, and I teach each one of 6 children, another 6 children, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and that to learn it by heart. There was still no time when really one should learn the Mishnah. It wasn't written down yet. It hadn't been written down yet. So I tell them, during the time that I return to my place and come here again to this village, I want, as I made sure, I divided these 13 children, five, each one of the 5 had to learn each separate chumash, and then I had to teach it to the others. So each one of the other 6 children had to learn one of the Severim of the Mishnah and teach it to the others. So I would come back and I would find out, I would get them to repeat it, and I found out if they've learnt it. In this way I made sure that the Torah is never forgotten from the people of Israel. And that's why there's a well-known statement made Kama Gadolim Ma'aseh Chiyah. How great are the deeds of Chiyah. So Rabbi Yossi asked Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he said this, even in comparison to the deeds of the master, because the teacher of Rabbi Chiyah was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So he said, yes, he's greater than me. So he said, is he even greater than my father, whom Rabbi Yehuda Nasi regarded his teacher? He said, no, such a thing I can't say, because he was his teacher of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So, no, there's that's a very cryptic scripture now. That Rabbi Zeder, who lived in the far later generations, he said, in a dream, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina, appeared before me. I said to him, where are you stationed in what we call the Yeshiva Shalmaila? And what the concept is, that in the world of eternity, in the Olam Haba, different planets, the great scholars, they go on getting deep insights into the heavenly Torah. Otherwise, there's a parallel to the earthly Torah and the heavenly Torah. And in Olam Haba, they're able to go to many different secrets of the world and of Torah. I mean, you compare this today, let's say I've got this book, Proof from Heaven. So, Abe Alexander is not Jewish, one of the biggest professors of brain surgery. And big professional, one of the top ones. And all the descriptions of near-death experience, he regarded them as psychological illusions for many years. And all the different people who brought proofs and so on, he said, well, still, he wouldn't accept it. But then he had a near-death experience himself. He couldn't deny it anymore. In fact, I compare this, I had, when I was studying philosophy, I attended a few lectures in London from the leading philosopher of what's called logical positivism. And he was a great debunker of religion. He said all religion and the soul has no real significance. Human beings don't have freedom, we're part of the animal world, and human beings just a higher animal with intelligence. The only truth is that which you know through sense perception and scientific, logical, mathematical analysis, and everything else is illusion. So I was studying semitics also at college, so I went also to this class because I found that many Jews who went to that class, they found it weakening their faith. So I challenged him non-stop, because what I told him, what you're saying that you made yourself an axiom. That's axiomatic, but you can't prove it. Nobody can prove the sense perception is truth, and if we're just a developed animal, nobody can prove also the mathematical faculty and logic is absolute truth. You say everything's relative. So therefore, there's no, it's also faith. You've got perfect faith in sense perception. And when it's sense perception, very deceitful. Even you admit that. Sense perception is always deceiving us, one step after another. You think the things are solid, then you find out through science they're not really. So you don't really know. If you get the flat Earth people, they also think my sense perception tells me the Earth is flat. But you start analysing and see it's a globe. So I had arguments with him, and he didn't believe in freedom. So he called me to his office, and he said to me, this said to me, I don't want you to have class anymore because you disturb me, and it upsets me. And also, why do you, I went in the class wearing a kippah, why do you wear a kippah? There were Indians wearing turbans, that didn't bother him, I wore a kippah bothered. So I said to him, if you think human beings, I'm not a free person, so therefore why should you be angry? So he got more angry. And I stopped going to class in order to create problems, stopped the class. But I reported this some years later in a major lecture they asked me to give. it was actually Osamer in Johannesburg, I should give a lecture on free will and determinism. So the chairman there was then the chief rabbi of South Africa, was a friend of mine, also worked in the colleges in England, the Kiro. So he said that in the previous Sunday Observer, which is like the higher style weekly paper, this same professor, he recanted his whole point of view because he had near-death experience, where he said, I can't anymore deny the existence of the soul because I was clinically dead and I came out of it, and I had a big experience, a high experience, higher life. The soul exists. This proof from heaven of you. He's made also a website on the same name on the internet, and he said he tried very hard, his best ability, to try and explain what happened to him in, let's say, in clinical scientific terms, and he couldn't. And he came to the conclusion, this is reality. And what goes on there? That's the Yeshiva Shalma. That's where people, the soul continues living, and it gets experiences that you can't get elsewhere. And here there's a story also of, this is Rabbi Zera, he, in a dream he saw it, so they came down to him, this Rabbi Hanina from previous generation, and he said to him, with whom do you study there together, for the high level of divine Torah? By Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan with whom? Rabbi Yanai. And Rabbi Yanai with whom? Rabbi Hanina. And Rabbi Hanina with whom? Rabbi Chia. And who's next to Rabbi Chia? So I said to him, Rabbi Yochanan can't be next to Rabbi Chia. So he said to me, in place of lightning bolts and torch fires, who can bring him here? Anyway, in the end, it turns out that nobody could sit next to Rabbi Chia. It was in the highest level. And in the end, Elijah often visited the yeshiva of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And then it turns out, what's described here concerning the high level of Rabbi Chia, that when Rabbi Chia was about to say the words that Hashem is Mechai Meitim, the whole world shook. They said in heaven, whose revealed secrets in the lower world? They said, Elijah. To whom? They brought Elijah and Mr. 60 lashes of fire to him, and then Eliyahu came to the prayer service. He appeared to them as a fiery bear. He entered the numbers and he stopped them praying. Why did he stop them praying? Because he would go on praying for the revival of the dead, which really likely to take place. That means the Mashiach would already come. Elijah wanted the Mashiach to come, but the world was not ready for it. The world would have become destroyed because they were not yet on a sufficiently high level to accept the Mashiach. So I'm going back now to the text here of in this essay of Rabbi Dessler. He says that tefillah of Rabbi Chia and his sons was so strong, and it came almost to be accepted. But what would happen? It was rejected through both the fire that it shouldn't happen, because if their prayer that the resurrection of the dead should already take place, they would bring the Mashiach before its time. Too early. Mankind still had to go through certain tests to make it possible to really get to the level, what's called Mashiach, revival of the dead, the return to Gan Eden. So that's what he refers to here. So the same applies also if the blessing of Yitzchak to Yaakov would have been without the mistake, without the deceit, followed through by Rivka, who had divine providence that she should see this through, then the Mashiach could already have come. It wasn't ready. Mankind first had to go through different developments till this could happen. So to understand this means often the ultimate revelation of good things could only come after mankind has gone through many tests. And the test is to take situations from the lowest level to the highest level, called Yerida Tzorech Aliyah. The lowest level and the biggest tragedies sometimes have to take place before the necessary revolution can come for mankind to reach its highest level. And really many of the episodes that are hinted at in the stories of the forefathers and afterwards, we see they gain fulfillment in the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs of the history of the Jewish people, including, for example, the hostility between the Jews and the nations around, and the way in which Jews became assimilated, the splitting of the northern kingdom from the southern kingdom, or the northern kingdom being led by a descendant of Yosef HaTzadik, and being ultimately split entirely, and until today are the lost tribes. I mean, to some extent, we are perhaps in a period of preparation in that the splitting of the tribes, which is taken up at quite length in the current parshas which we read, that they are a premonition of what's happening in later times, that the Jews will be split amongst the nations of the world, and most of the tribes of Israel become submerged. And today some of them coming back. There's even a very worthwhile organization, Shavei Golan, Michael Friend, the Rosh Rabbanim who tells me this, where whole groups all over the world are coming up with certain traditions that have been preserved amongst them in a non-Jewish world, often without real knowledge. But they go back to the ancient observance of Jewish observances. And today, many of them have become very accepted through the procedure of Geirut, Chumrah, and therefore they're accepted as part of the return. So in this manner, we can also understand the deceit of Yaakov, which was the Shem Shammai, to bring the revelation from that which is hidden. Also the sin of Yehuda, who committed an immoral sin, and through this came about, ultimately, the birth of Peretz, the ancestor of David HaMelech the Mashiach. And also demonstrated, Tzot Ko Mimeni, how Yehuda admitted his fault, even in public. He said, she is more righteous than I am. And from here also we'll learn out that from her righteousness, we learn out that the high virtue is not to put a person to shame in public. So we have to understand in this also what happened with Ruth. He became the ancestress of David HaMelech. But that we'll have to deal with the next year. And please, any more questions? Can ask before the year.